Hi friends, Demonic Angel, and I was just thinking about the Victorian era tradition of telling ghost stories and other spooky tales at Christmas time. It's not obviously very popular in modern times, but I love history. So then that got me thinking about personal experiences and such, and I thought, well, I'll jump on and share a few Christmas sort of ghost stories, if you will. And then I'm going to go and enjoy Christmas. People have asked me, well, if you're an occultist, or more commonly, like if you're a Satanist, then do you celebrate Christmas? My personal view on that is that, yeah, my culture, the culture I come from, is a huge part of my identity, and I kind of look at some of the other meanings in it, such as a time to celebrate family, where everybody takes some time off of work and is able to be together. That's really what's important to me, and also I have I'm actually a really good cook. Especially the last few years, I've been cooking pretty good. So I'm having my family come over, and then of course, I think the day before, so Christmas Eve, we're going to a family member's house, and they're gonna cook for us. But I'm gonna now my partner and we're gonna cook together, and that's a lot of fun because he's usually busier than me, and he actually taught me a lot about cooking. So that's wonderful. I love being able to make a really good meal that everybody can enjoy. So, my parents, whatever, they're coming over. Anyway, I'm making pork chops with apples. And you peel them, chop them, skin them, and then I do a mixture of cinnamon and brown sugar and a little bit of nutmeg, and then I bake them with a side of green beans, and that has its salt and pepper. Oh, I forgot to mention, the best part is the sage. So I put a little bit of sage, and then I don't bake the chops raw. I sear them on my cast iron skillet a little bit, just enough to get that that texture, really, that crispy, gorgeous, appetizing texture that everybody's kind of looking for. So I'm making that, and then chocolate chip cookies. So it's just like what it sounds like, chocolate chips with instead of the white flour background. It has that, but then I use cocoa. It's real cocoa, so it's just really rich and good, and then it's just got the semi-sweet chocolate chips. And another part of it is a few weeks ago, my dad, he's just a picky, stubborn ass, lots of reasons. He's not as emotional and angry as he used to be. He's an addict to prescription drugs, but even that he's cut down on. Probably, it's different things, forcibly in some way, because it's much harder to obtain things that people doctors used to give out pretty easily, like benzodiazepams. That's really not something like that. That's not a painkiller, but doctors are afraid of litigation and all these different things, rightfully so, in many ways. But I kind of pride myself that I can get my dad to eat really, really good. my partner and I, because he's an excellent cook. But when my dad comes over, he's gonna eat. So he came over with my mom a few weeks ago, and I had making in the slow cooker. It's like loaded potatoes, except in the slow cooker, you chop them up, and I put some butter on them, and it's just like what it sounds like, where it's just layers of cheese and crumbled bacon bits, and I like to do the green onions, and then that just, for about 5 hours in the slow cooker. So, he probably came when that was almost done. It's like, oh boy. So he liked that so much, I'm gonna make those for for Christmas, and basically I'm gonna just make them in the oven though. But I'm gonna do it a little different. I'm not really a fan of tin foil, aluminum. There's a lot of health problems that are associated with the use of tin foil. Lots of different things that I've changed my mind on as I research and grown up. Like, my grandparents used to say that stop drinking out of water bottles or plastic. It's going to give you health problems. Or don't sit so close to the TV. You're going to strain your neck and hurt yourself. And of course, as a child, you don't want to listen to any of that. That's the way I felt. But now I obviously realize how much, how smart that is. So I don't drink out of plastic. I don't use aluminum foil to do things. So instead, I'm going to make it into a casserole that goes into a glass dish, and then that cooks in the oven. So it's the same kind of idea. So I think everybody is going to enjoy that very much so, and leave here full. And that's what I like about Christmas. I'm pagan. I like the idea of the Yuletide, and I was, able to see the Jupiter and Saturn come together last night, and that was just really amazing. But yeah, it's just a part of my culture. That's a part of my identity, and I mean, celebrating worldly things, it's pretty satanic, so, finding some earthly, delighting in earthly pleasures of food and friendship and family, that's a worldly pleasure. So that's the way I look at that, and I just, I find the deeper meaning of being able to spend time together, and a lot of my immediate family, they're Christian, and I don't tell them what I think, or anything like that. I just enjoy the food, the moment, and the making memories, because the journey, that's the thing from Buddhism, right? The journey is the destination, and that's definitely the way I look at it. So I guess that was like a long intro in a way, but I just wanted to brag about my cooking. Maybe I'll throw on some cooking videos one day on here or something if it's really something I feel drawn to do so. These stories aren't super long, and after Christmas, as I was mentioning, I'm gonna my next video will be basically an introduction to the Goetic Demon that I'm going to do a sigil video for next, but I want to go over some information and history concerning the demon, and present that information, and I'll do that probably within a day or two of after Christmas. But thinking about the Victorian tradition of ghost stories, because of course it's dark more than it is light, and all those things where, of course, in Victorian times, this meant that people had to stay over at one another's home, of course, because they had to travel by horse and buggy, and even when they're staying the night at your extended family's house, you're probably going to at some point have to travel by horse and buggy in the dark, and in many cases, like places probably ranging from places like Germany to the northeastern United States, you're going to have to encounter go through a dark forest. And, that really stirs the imagination, right? You're seeing shadows, the noises that we hear out in nature. I'm a hiker, as I've mentioned and shown. It's really crazy. But yeah, it's easy to see why that fits Christmas if you really think about it. So just to touch on a story I've probably incorporated into some of the other things I've done. When I was 9 years old, this happened on Christmas. Now, prior to this, I can remember seeing dead people, ghosts, as long as I can really remember. But and sometimes they look like normal, solid. Like, this was when I saw ghosts as being outside of myself, and of course I was about to have this whole haunted experience that lasted a few years, from about age 9 till about 12 or 13, something like that. But this was really the start of it. Now, I mentioned these other things because I saw people looking injured, dead, that kind of thing. I was kind of used to that. That was just normal for me. But what happened was basically that we had done some presents on Christmas Eve with relatives who came over when I was 9. And I don't know why I remember being 9, but it was places this sometime in the 90s. And so we did all these presents, and as that was happening, I started to feel sick, like I was getting cold, a head cold coming on. And essentially, my relatives, extended family left. My mom had her own bedroom, my father had his own bedroom. They still do that to this day, because even though it's the same situation all these years later, my dad does shift work. So sometimes he'll work stretches of days, and then he'll work stretches of night shift, and it's really hard to sleep in the same room with somebody like that that's just off and on. So essentially it was a 3-bedroom house I grew up in. So my sister and I, we shared a bedroom. And since I started to feel sick, I really didn't want to keep my sister awake. I started to get that fever, the achiness. So my mom gave me some medicine, and I just liked the tree and everything, and I decided to sleep out on the couch a little bit till I felt better. I probably read a little bit, because I even as a kid I would read at that time stuff like Goosebumps, but I thought that was fake scary. The Boxcar Children was another one, another series. So I like those kinds of things around that age. And at some point, though, I fell asleep, and that was all normal up until this point, except I woke up in the middle of the night sometime, and I started to feel worse. But my mom had some stuff to do early in the morning to get ready for some other stuff on Christmas Day. So in the middle of the night, I woke her telling her I still didn't feel good. She said, well, I'm going to get up and have my coffee and go do other stuff in about an hour anyway, so I'll shower. You go sleep in my room. And so I did. And I left the bedroom door open, and then my sister's, mine and my sister's bedroom, right across the way, bedroom door shut. And I passed out pretty easily because I took some acetaminophen again. Nothing was weird, nothing was, I can only describe that as nothing unusual. I was just really hoping I would feel better enough as the day went on. But something woke me, and I really can describe it almost like that feeling we all talk about of knowing somebody's watching you, and that happened. And I think that it, like that feeling, except it's just so intense it wakes you. So that happened. And that wasn't, that wasn't really a thing for me. If I happened to wake up, a lot of the times I would, see ghosts that would try to talk to me, but it wasn't usually like this experience of waking me up. So this feeling though, but it was very foreboding, very scary. The hairs on my arms raised up. I felt unsafe. And I started to sit up in bed a little bit, just because of that feeling. And I looked, the bedroom door was open. I look down into the hallway, and the shadow, and it was really too tall to be a person, like 7 feet tall. There was no, I don't know how to put it. It was almost like it halfway glided but halfway walked, where there was still the, somewhat of the up and down bobbing of footsteps, but it wasn't quite right. And it was just solid. I couldn't see through it at all. And I had never seen something like this, because for whatever reason, I would imagine ghosts and dead people as fully formed. But I had never seen something like this, and it was pitch black. And as it glided from the hallway into the room, the doorway, my brain just was starting to go, it's too big to be a person, and it's got to be Dad. It's got to be my dad, right? I'm trying to come up with some kind of explanation. But it just, that sick to my stomach feeling got worse, and I got so scared, I got petrified. And then the smell hit me, and it smelled like what I've actually, now all these years later, other people have claimed to experience dead people stinking, or some people claim it's demons. I'm sure it's probably a range of experience, or a range of reasons for that. But this was just, and I had never experienced it. Stink, and that's really what that smell was rotting. And to be honest with you, really, I could kind of smell blood, probably vomit from dead people, I would say. That's how real and present that would be for me. But this is different. This is like, God, this is like if somebody was out in the Florida swamp in the summer or something, for a couple weeks, not embalmed, obviously, and it's just putrefaction. So it was meant to scare me. It was meant to send that message. And I just I looked at it frightened, and I didn't know what to do. And it kind of started to get closer to the foot of the bed, and I just put the pillows over my head. All these years later, I still sleep on my side. And I put a pillow over my head because of, what would happen to me in the ensuing few years, where I couldn't go to sleep, so frightened, and that this was just the way that I would feel safe. And I acknowledge that it's still, obviously, I integrated it in this way where now I like to sleep in this kind of fetal position with a pillow over my head. And that has to do with that. But yeah, I fell back asleep. It was gone, and then went out later in the morning, and I was like, Dad, what the heck were you doing? And then when he said that he wasn't home, I just felt overwhelmed, because it was more real even than these other experiences I had. And after that happened, then the haunting stuff started. But this was the beginning of it, and it happened on Christmas Day. And more fascinating to me is it happened when I was sick. So I physically was ungrounded, and at the edge of beginning puberty, and all those different reasons that parapsychologists will say might be parts of haunting. But after this happened, objects would fly off the kitchen counters. That's when I would hear the knocking on the wall. Then I started to see the two human-looking ghosts. Now, my whole theory is obviously that this shadow thing was the murderer of these other two people, but obviously to be more intimidating to me and to them, it chose to look this way, and it went after me because I can see them, and they wanted help from me. And so this thing saw me as a threat, because if his murder victims go, you can imagine why that wouldn't make a murderer too happy. But people, they're gonna, it's a weird thing, but yeah, people, they have to find a way to move on, and it's very compelling. And when dead people have been trapped, they don't have a lot of people to talk to, right? So they find the people who can, and even if that happens to be a little girl, they're going to have to do that. So this was the beginning of all this stuff. And it was Christmas Day, and it's a totally true story. And that was the start of 3 years of that whole story I've mentioned. I'll put a link in the description. I think I called it my paranormal childhood, and I kind of detailed that in a couple parts. But so the other Christmas story I'd like to share is I mentioned that my father is still a minor, so he has his issues, but he he really loves his work. Always has. It's just it's like that work really is something that keeps him going, keeps him grounded in this kind of way. And I think it's also, it's almost like when people say they want to have a job they love, they wish they could be doing their hobby as a job. That's my dad. Like, this is his hobby. So he loves being at work, and that's why, even though he is in later middle age, he still wants to do that for a few more years before retiring. So recently, probably within the last couple weeks, or even maybe around the time I was talking about him coming over and checking out my loaded potatoes, he started telling me about, him and my mom were telling me about, at the mine, there's a lot of different people, from all walks of life. Part of it has to do with they technically train people for different things, ranging from engineering to company, truck specialists, because obviously to be, working in a mine in any capacity, even the laborers have to have training. So this appeals to all kinds of people. Well, recently, within the last few months, there's a gentleman who came in from Australia, and he works with Dad, and he works with him a lot. And what happened was, at first, he just naturally, was attracted to Dad for some reason, started, chatting with him, having meals with him. Dad can be a pretty sociable, likable guy when he wants to be. And so, he didn't think too much of it, really. And, but then he learned about, the guy actually was telling him, after work, that because, there's not too much to whatever, to do, and there's not too many places to eat. So there's like 2 cafes. Well, one's like a burger place and one's like Mexican food that a lot of the miners go by because it's out in the middle of nowhere up in the mountains, mining. So they go and they're gonna have a burger, and the guy tells them, well, I came here, you know, I just had to get away from everything. His wife, and he had 4 kids, and he had been a miner all these years as well in Australia. But 3 of the 4 kids, because the one wasn't with them, died in a horrible, pile-up vehicle accident. Something like 7 years prior to now. And he tried to just stay in Australia and these different things, and briefly he got like remarried or whatever, and he just felt like that wasn't right, and he just wanted his fresh start, and he, did all the things. I mean, he's here legally and here, trying to become a permanent citizen, because he just wants to be by himself, I guess, really. And of course it's very understandable. This is his, way of coping. But so he tells Dad this, and then shortly after that, Dad's boss and some of the other gentlemen miners, talk about, boy, we'll just call the man from Australia Jacob. They go, Jacob's family, God, it's really horrible what happened with him. So, to tie into the story here, the boss guy comes up to all the miners, and he says, well, we have to do this new thing we're implementing, and everybody, is going to get this journal. And what you have to do is you have to log your different machine checks, but you have to pencil write them. And you'll turn them in, and then you also write notes about anything else that sticks out for you that you think I should look at. And then once a week I have to come through and look at them, and it's a company policy thing. I don't want to do it, but we're going to implement this as mandatory. Okay, everybody's going to do this. So Jacob, the Australian miner, he takes his little notebook and starts writing in it that at 12:01 he takes his work break, and across the street he sees so also across the street from the mine, quarter of a mile down the road, is a cemetery, and it's huge. I've been there. And a lot of veterans are buried there because it was incorporated around World War II, because of with not too many opportunities for young men in the middle of nowhere. A lot of them enlisted, got killed in World War II, and so this was eventually, it was just started out mainly as a veteran cemetery, and then it expanded to just be for everybody, still with the big veteran section. So that's right down the street from the mine. So Jacob writes in his log, I saw a guy walking down the road, except, he's bleeding in his face, and he's dead, and his face is gray and pale. And then the next day he writes, I saw a crying Hispanic woman walking down the road, and she vanished as a vehicle approached. So, whatever, 4 days later, some shit like that, the guy wants to look at everybody's work books, and he looks at Jacob's, and he's like, okay, come on, son. Like, I'm trying to, I need to know about work, not this. And he had to explain to this guy that he doesn't want to know about ghosts. And that's that's weird enough as it is, right? I mean, now it's not really weird. People sailors, people who work in hospitals, and people who work in the mining industry, they're a superstitious lot for obvious reasons. Miners are around these minerals, and they actually affect our brains in these various ways, and then a lot of them die in these accidents. Plus, the mine my dad works at is right by a cemetery, so in hospitals, people are dying, sailors. I mean, you're out there at the mercy of the ocean, whatever, the lake. I mean, of course, these people would experience phenomena, I think. It makes sense to me. So that's just funny. But like, that's just how that is. So yeah, Dad had heard some of the other guys heard him, whatever, saying things, because Jacob's not very quiet about his opinions about the paranormal. But a lot of other gentlemen, rather than ridicule him, they have similar stories. However, obviously, it's just a little bit different since he kind of has a harder time separating that from work so much. And so the end of my story really is that once again, Dad and Jacob are on the night shift, and they go down because obviously the Mexican restaurant is like a 24-hour, 24/7 joint because of big bucks from the miners and a nearby hospital. And, people working those night shifts bring in some cash. So Dad and Jacob are having some food again, and he goes, guy, and he goes, okay, he's wandering around because I think he must have owned property around here. And I know you can see him because he told me that you can see him. And so I just feel comfortable discussing these things with you because they're eating at the Steiner alone. And then almost like my mom was kind of like laughing in a way, like, because my mom is very Christian, but her take on this was that this gentleman, poor guy, losing his family, and he's mentally ill, but this guy, having chats with Dad, it's really been able to help him and kind of, he doesn't write about ghosts in his work log anymore, but he'll talk to my dad about it. And my dad, he's like, I do think so. I think that Dad experiences these things that I do in this similar type of a way. However, he, for all these years, he's had a very important mining job, and at some point he was a superintendent of a mine as well. And you can't be, it's a man's world in that kind of a sense. Can't be talking about this kind of stuff and being credible and being professional. So it really is more like, I just think that he's repressed a lot of that, and that translated into repressing aspects of himself and creating some of these emotional issues. And I think that's my take on some of, I think, his addictive problems, especially when he was younger, because I don't think people always, really choose to be this way. I think in the case of Jacob, I think trauma opened him up. But if you're one of the 10% or something who are like this, you can't choose to not be this way. You can think of it in other terms, like you're imagining things, but then you're still an empath. You're still absorbing and perceiving on a obviously you repress it to a subconscious level, the emotions of these dead people. And until that's recognized in some kind of conscious way, you wouldn't have to call it ghosts, but that's going to it's going to have to translate in some way. But so Dad tells me how he chats with this gentleman about UFOs and Bigfoot theories and all this stuff, because Dad kind of likes the Bermuda Triangle, those kinds of things, and they'll talk about those things, and he will tell Dad all these things. And then my mom goes, and you don't believe him, do you? You don't believe what he's saying. You don't see what he's saying. That's crazy. And my dad just, he smiles and doesn't say anything. That's because I think that he does. So I think that Dad kind of just, I think that this gentleman just started having these experiences when he lost his family, because I do think that trauma can open that door for people. Not always. You're not going to have somebody experience a family tragedy and then have paranormal experiences, but it can happen that way. And he was just shocked and tried to move to a different country to deal with it. But, you've got to tell somebody. I mean, that's what I do here on YouTube. You got to tell somebody. It's just a burning, itching, gosh, is somebody else out there like me? Does somebody, have some kind of, is there a relative, somebody who can relate? And, but I think that him talking to this guy really has helped him, well, I should say more like my dad listens to him, has helped him process some of this. And I think Dad has been this way. I think it's, in this case, genetic. And, but, Dad just, he's just, looks out to the cemetery at night, and I think he sees these dead people. But, he doesn't write about it in his work journal, but he sees it nonetheless. And it's just really fascinating that guy said, I know that you can see him, so I'm going to talk to you about it, because that guy told me you can see them, you can help them. So, I'm definitely not alone in this kind of a thing. But those are my two little, Christmas stories or whatever, if you will. But, hopefully that was something to think about. I enjoy telling it. So I wish you guys Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Merry Yuletide. Whatever thing you want to celebrate or don't celebrate, I just, fuck it. If nothing else, it's it's an opportunity to pig out on junk food and maybe watch a little bit of classic movies and such. And I think that in itself is something to really cherish. It's great. Well, thank you for listening to my Christmas ghost stories. I'll talk to you guys later.